Welcome to episode 16 of the Not Another Fitness podcast. Today, we're doing a bit of myth busting, aren't we, Rambo?
Or AKA the bullshit broadcast.
The bullshit broadcast. What a great name for a podcast. Maybe we should just rename and go with that for the whole lot.
Yeah, we didn't think about this name thing for long enough, did we?
No, we did not. And now we've got competition, haven't we, on iTunes? Someone else has got that name.
Yeah, I searched us, and when I searched our podcast, and there was Not Another Fitness podcast, but technically it started after we did, so we're the original.
Yeah, so if you want to get on there and give us some reviews, do so now. Time is of the essence.
Please review us on Apple, please. I think we've got 3 reviews, and I know from all the lovely comments that people have said or sent to us that I know we have more listeners than that. So if you do have time, please do jump on Apple and rate and review us. It does help get the podcast to other people. So I'm doing that pretty early on now.
Yeah, because my mum is not prepared to write a 4th, so we need help.
And my mum into protein. So.
We've already had her feedback. Introduce yourselves properly and don't fucking do anything else about protein. I've had enough. I've had my fill. I've got whey coming out my ears.
She's probably not going to like this one either.
Bad start.
Sorry, Mom.
Right, where are we at? Let's get this bad boy back on track. So, Rambo, what have you been up to over the last week or so? It has been a week, hasn't it?
It has been a week, I think. Yeah, it was just saying it feels like ages. What have I been up to? I went over to Southend on Monday, which was nice. So I had a photo shoot for a clothing brand. Shout out to Jay at Waddable. So if anyone wants to go check them out, they do clothing for fitness and athletic clothing. So I did a photo shoot for them, which was very cool. Loved it. So got a few images back already and waiting for him to edit the other ones and flick them over to me so I can see them. So that's exciting. There'll be no photoshopping, but he will be evening out my tan, which was quite nice.
Oh, that's very kind.
Yeah, so it's amazing what good lighting and a good camera can do. So that was fun. Nice to see their setup over there. So go check them out. That's it really, just a standard week. Clients doing well. Got some more consultations lined up for next week. Clients are smashing it actually. I think it's coming out the other side of lockdown. Everyone's getting back into a routine, and it's nice to see the behaviors that were ingrained during lockdown and now continuing and filtering through into some kind of normal life with those clients. So that's lovely to see. So yes, not much planned for this weekend. Maybe a burger, a few drinks, all grand.
Standard weekend.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I was just going to ask you actually with the photo shoot, what are you like in terms of in front of the camera, like having to like strike a pose and flex?
Absolutely awful. So
it's a nightmare, isn't it?
Oh, one of my best friends, Sean, shout out Sean. I also call her Spud, my Spuddy. She has this joke that the many faces of Amyramshead, because she says, have you seen that meme that is like, I have 2 looks, one is an absolute banger and the other is the troll that's crawled out from under a bridge? Like, that is me. Literally, I'll either look like a right 10 or I'll look like I've crawled out from underneath the dustbin. So Sean always makes that point. So but Jay, to be fair, Jay was awesome. So he has a little like gym set up there. So he was like, just start training, throw some weights around, do some stretching, do some mobility, and I'll just snap away. So there was another one of his, I think one of his colleagues there as well, we were just talking and chatting. So it was actually really, really natural. And it is awkward, but I suppose it's like anything. It's as awkward as you make it. So, yeah, and I didn't really have to do anything in particular. I wasn't holding poses. It wasn't like I would imagine like a fitness photo shoot is. It was very much like, and to be fair, it wasn't about me. It was about the clothes. So he wanted to just make sure that
come on. You're not caring about the clothes.
No, but like it wasn't awkward, to be fair. And like I know Jay as well, so it was a bit different.
That's good.
Yeah, I know. Well, you've done a proper photo shoot before, and I bet they're bloody awkward.
Yeah, I've only done one, and one was enough, Rambo, to be fair. That's why I asked that. So, short summary of my week, nothing much happened. Just looking forward to getting back to the gym. But I'll tell you about when I got so I got a photo shoot done. Again, just as a look, this is how you lose body fat. Book a photo shoot at the end of it, get spray tanned up and go and flex in your pants or shorts or whatever. I mean, it was awful. I mean, it was all right in terms of the guy doing it. It was like fine, but doing training and having someone taking your photo is one thing, but literally just standing there flexing, like my stomach was cramping at the end of that. It was horrific, absolutely horrific. And I was like, I could never do this. Not that I would be asked to, but out of choice, I'd be like, this is not the one.
And like, to be honest, I would never do something like that anyway. That's why I quite liked the experience on Monday, because A, it wasn't about me, it was about the clothes. B, like I had some shorts on and a sports bra and was doing all this mobility stuff. You could see rolls on my belly, and like obviously it's weird because when I look at photos, the first thing my eye goes to is the rolls on my belly, but when you actually look at the photo as a whole, you don't see it. Like, it doesn't matter, it's just me. And like I would rather have that more kind of more natural way of doing it than have fucking ab cramp, mate. That does not sound fun.
That was probably due to one, the incessant flexing, and two, the really poor depleted nutrition and mineral balance leading up to it. But yeah, if anyone fancies doing a photo shoot, give us a shout and I'll give you a few tips. I'll tell one last thing, we'll move on from that. When I turned up, the guy was like, oh, what have you got to wear and stuff? And I was like, just shorts, blah blah blah. And he's like, oh, have you got any oil on you? And I was like, no. He's like, do you want some? I'm like, will it make a difference? And I initially thought, and he was like, yeah, it will, or helps like bring out the definition and stuff. And he got this bottle of oil out of the bag, and I was like, I had that split second of, is he going to pass that to me, or is he just going to start smarming me with it in some warehouse in North London or wherever the hell it was? Luckily, he gave me the bottle and said, there you go, fill your boots. So it was fine. But
it's funny, isn't it, how you find yourself in these situations. So at one point, like, it's like, oh, take the top off. No, we'll just have you in the bra. And if you could just turn the top of the shorts down. And I'm like, I'm in a room with a man that isn't my boyfriend. And he's asking me to take off my clothes. Like, this is bizarre. Like,
it's bizarre how like business like it is, don't you think?
Yeah.
Though,
yeah,
it's very like they. Oh yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was similar. It's just like, oh yeah, can you just do that? Just put your hand above your head, just like squeeze your abs, flex it. And I'm like,
yeah.
This is like, I'm in a warehouse, somewhere in London, some random guy with a camera, and I'm in my pants, greased up, flexing. What am I doing? How have I got here? How has my life brought me here? A series of poor choices, ladies and gents.
Funny.
Right, let's get on to the meat of this podcast. So, we've been toying with this one for a while, haven't we? Doing some kind of like myth busting type show, because there's no doubt about it, in health and fitness especially, there's a lot of myths that they just don't tend to go away.
They just hang around like a bad smell, don't they?
They really do. They really do. So we jotted down a few, and if any come to us as we go along, we'll include them as well. But we're just going to go through one by one, talk about the myth, maybe where it comes from, and why you probably shouldn't do it or shouldn't believe it. Who wants to start?
I'm not on the right page. There we go. I will start, if you like, because I know about this one a little bit, enough to talk about it. Fasted cardio, then.
What's that, Rambo? What's fasted cardio?
Fasted cardio. So doing any form of, when we say cardio, we mean some kind of aerobic exercise, maybe depending into going anything that works kind of, your lungs, your transportation of oxygen around the body, your circulatory system, anything that gets the heart rate up, basically. So ideally aerobic, but sometimes goes into the anaerobic state in terms of if you're pushing it a little bit harder. So any kind of interval training will get into more like anaerobic levels, but anything where you're really trying to improve your fitness levels, I would say, would be termed as cardio. Fasted implies that you are doing it in a fasted state, which means you have not consumed any food or energy. So, for example, if you get up in the morning and you go for a run before work, before breakfast, that would be fasted cardio. There is a little bit of a myth in the fitness world, or there is I think it's been busted probably the last few years, but I suppose we're in the know. There are some people out there that still believe that fasted cardio is maybe superior for weight loss. There was a little bit of a, let's say like I don't want to say a rumor. There was a little bit of information flying around that it taps into your fat stores a little bit more than say other if you eat before training or doing any kind of cardio, then obviously you wouldn't burn what you had the night before and blah 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 blah. So I'd just like to call bullshit on that. Fat, not fat. Fasted cardio is not superior for fat loss. Being in a calorie deficit is what is superior for fat loss. So if you want to do cardio, like I'm just going to go ahead with my personal opinion, really. Well, the opinion that is based in science. If you want to do cardio as your form of training to try and increase your aerobic capacity or increase your recovery threshold or increase your anaerobic capacity, then whenever you do it, that's like your personal preference, to be honest. And by doing that or by eating before, some people can train on an empty stomach and they feel absolutely fine doing that. Some people can't train on an empty stomach. They actually feel depleted. They feel like they can't go that extra mile or they can't push it a little bit more while they're in that fasted state. So they might actually need to consume a little bit of food before they go and do any form of cardio. Either or is complete personal preference. In terms of fat loss, being in a calorie deficit over a sustained period of time, that is what is going to get you to fat loss. By doing fasted cardio, that is not going to get you there any quicker. That is not going to get you there, give you the holy grail of fat loss. Unfortunately, the holy grail of fat loss is being in a calorie deficit for a long period or consistent period of time. Would you agree, my friend?
I would. Thank you for calling me your friend of the time. Well. No, I pretty much completely agree with that. So actually, this is so just to reiterate, yeah, doing fasted cardio is not superior for fat loss. The most important thing is getting the cardio done. If you're using that to help with weight loss, this is actually like a good thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, so some of the myths, you're like, when you find out that it's not true, it's like, oh, that's a bit of a downer. I bought a load of green tea and I really thought it was going to help with fat loss, for example. Whereas with like fasted cardio, if someone tells me, do you know what, Andy, it doesn't matter. You can eat before a workout or you can train on an empty stomach. It makes no difference. To me, that's like brilliant because now I've got choice. So now it's one less thing that you have to worry about and factor in. And without kind of delving too far into the science of it, look, if you train on an empty stomach, this is kind of where the confusion comes from. If you train on an empty stomach in a fasted state, you're likely to use a higher percentage of fat for fuel, especially if it's that kind of steady state cardio, like, going for a walk, going for a jog, going for a bike ride. But that does not equate to greater fat loss over like a 24-hour period or by the end of the week. And that's what people get a little bit sucked into. And when presented in a certain way, it can look superior because it's a higher percentage, but it's the total that rings true at the end of the day. So yeah, unfortunately, the size of the calorie deficit is the most important thing. And if you run a 5K fasted or a 5K fed and you burn the same amount of calories, well, guess what? You'll get the same amount of weight loss at the end of it.
Yeah, true. Do you think it's a good idea just to mention fasted training in general because I mean, we talked about fasted calorie for fat loss, but like just as a quick one, like fasted training in general. So if you go and do a strength workout in the morning in the fasted state, again, same principle applies. It completely depends on personal preference. Again, it will be hard to maybe tap into your carbohydrate stores if you are fasted. So it might be that you might notice marginal differences in strength, but not max, especially if you had like a big meal the night before. All I would say with regards to any kind of fasted strength training is your glycogen stores are going to then be quite depleted afterwards. So I would try and get some food in pretty pronto after you've completed any kind of fasted strength training. So get some good form of carbs in and some good form of protein in as well, just so if you haven't got any carbs or any fat going on in any fat stores for your body to actually utilize, we don't want the body to turn to amino acids as a source of fuel, which is unlikely to happen. However, if you stay in that fasted state for a prolonged period of time after any kind of strength training, then that's where the danger lies. So always a good idea for recovery to try and get in some kind of carbs and proteins after any kind of fasted strength training.
Very sensible advice. And just to round it off with with my thoughts on the training side of things, if we talk about fasted training for fat loss, that's probably to me, there's like no correlation with that, so I wouldn't even consider it. If you talk about fasted training in terms of more intense sessions, so maybe resistance training sessions or even intervals, what you have to think about, or what might be worth considering, is for some people, if they eat beforehand, they might be able to perform at a higher level, get an extra couple of reps out, run a little bit faster, run that last interval quicker. So it has that knock-on effect of suddenly you get a more productive training session. Maybe you get an extra like couple of percent on. So over one session, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. If you consistently get better results by eating some food before you train, then maybe that's something you look to program in. But in terms of the myth itself, which is training, fasted cardio is superior for fat loss, it's exactly that. It's a myth.
Busted.
Done.
Busted.
Next one on the list. High intensity interval training versus low intensity steady state cardio. This is your one on here, mate. So what's the particular myth that you would like to highlight here?
Again, just that one is superior than the other for fat loss, really. I have a bit of an issue with high intensity interval training in that very few people actually perform it to its truest form. High intensity interval training is periods of maximum intensity with minimal rest in order to produce an adaptation. And very, very few people actually have ever perform it at maximal intensity. I mean, God, I can think of probably 2 occasions in my life that I've ever performed at maximal intensity. And I'm not going to lie, it was fucking disgusting. I ended up on the floor. So like, you know, if you're doing any kind of high intensity interval training, it's going to take a lot out of you physically, and it's actually going to require a lot of recovery. So I've had a bit of an issue over lockdown with all these fit pros on Instagram doing their Instagram lives of any kind of HIIT training and doing them 5 days a week. HIIT is not designed to be performed 5 days a week, because any level of intensity in training is designed to have the appropriate recovery. And I would argue that if you are doing HIIT 5 times a week, you're probably not making much progress or feeling much fitter, and there's a reason for that, because you're probably doing it too much and not allowing your body time to recover from it. With regards to it being superior for fat loss, once again, all it's going to do is exercising in that manner is just a way of creating a calorie deficit. If you're in a calorie deficit and you're trying to perform at maximal intensity, you're going to get very tired very quickly, quickly and very fatigued and probably be under recovered as well. So I would argue that HIIT is not the best thing. Or if you are going to utilize HIIT in terms of creating a calorie deficit, or you just enjoy that type of training, that's fine. But maybe make sure you're doing it at a time where you know you're fueled and you've got enough energy. With regards to LISS, so when we say LISS in terms of low intensity, steady state cardio, so this could just be something like a 60-minute bike ride that is purely aerobic. Your heart rate doesn't get up too much. It's completely flat. There's no hills. There's no kind of moments where you really have to push it. Again, if we're talking about fat loss, all it's going to do is create a calorie deficit. It keeps it aerobic. It means you can sustain it for longer periods of time, which means you can go for longer. So, walking on a treadmill for an hour, wonderful. Like, and don't forget, these two types of training are very, very different. There are people who cannot physically perform HIIT because of their physiology, because it might be the way that they're new to exercising. In any increase of intensity increases risk for injury as well. And if you're brand new to exercising, I would not send somebody straight into a HIIT session, particularly if they're, you know, got a lot of weight to lose, they're obese, maybe they've got injuries already. You know, I would maybe say, okay, well, what can you do? Can you maybe go for a half an hour walk on the treadmill? Or can you maybe go for a low impact 20 minutes on the cross trainer or something like that? So again, it's thinking about the person you've got in front of you. Neither one is superior than the other. And I would actually argue that the ability to consistently do more low intensity stuff, you can still get your heart rate up doing low intensity stuff, but not to that maximal level, would actually allow you to make adaptations over a longer period of time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan actually of exactly what you said there, like the lower intensity stuff. Yeah, over a prolonged period of time, or especially if someone's trying to diet and there's not as much fuel on board, so recovery's already compromised a little bit anyway. So actually doing some lower intensity work can be a bit kinder on the body. So that's something to think about. And like you said, in terms of whether, you know, high intensity interval training or just lower intensity stuff, it's unfortunately, and I wish it wasn't the case, but it is all about like how many calories it burns. So there's benefits and there's positives and negatives about each one. So when you decide which one works for you, just don't base it around the theory that one is superior to the other. It's very much a kind of horses for courses thing. So interval training in general it's over and done with a little bit quicker. So maybe if you're struggling for time, that could be an option. There's added benefits that come with interval training or higher intensity training. So like that, those adaptations. So you're probably going to get fitter, you know, more stress put on the cardiovascular system. So in terms of fitness, definitely like interval training for me, like with my running, is a fundamental part of me getting quicker over time. That's exactly what I do. But we're talking again, the myth is that it's superior for fat loss, and actually fat loss in general and losing weight is seen in some circles as this way of a kind of punishing our body, and everything's got to be hard and everything's got to be brutal. And exactly like you said there, you know, you do a genuine HIIT session and, you know, you might be on the floor afterwards feeling a little bit sick. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for it, but for most people to do something consistently, which is the whole name of the game, a lower intensity approach is probably going to be the way to go. And yeah, it's just, I think people like the reason why they think they've done more is because it's the feeling of feeling broken and thinking, oh God, well, that must be better than going for a walk. Well, 20 minutes of high intensity work versus, let's say you burn 300 calories in your HIIT session and you burn 300 calories going for an hour or so walk, it's going to have the same impact on fat loss, but you're going to wake up from the walk the next day not feeling like you've been hit by a bus. So just think about that when you select your method. Just don't pick one because you think it's better than the other, because it's probably not.
Yeah, I just actually put a story on my Instagram about exercising versus activity, two very, very different things. So like you could go and do a half an hour hit session and lie on the sofa or go back in bed for the rest of the day and burn 300 calories. Whereas you could not do any exercise for that day, but you could just be out and about being active, hit 15,000 steps, and you've actually burnt 600 calories above and beyond what your, basal metabolic rate would be. So it's then effectively you put yourself in more of a deficit if fat loss is the goal, and you're a bit less broken. So I think
it's a brilliant point.
Yeah, you've got people who are really sedentary, have really sedentary jobs, go and beast themselves for half an hour, 45 minutes doing one of these HIIT classes, and they're like, oh, it's okay because I've trained. Well, no, you'd actually probably benefit a little bit more from going out, going for a walk, being more active in your everyday life. Those are the things that mean you can maintain a little bit more balance with maybe the way you eat, or that would put you in a greater calorie deficit overall. So yeah. And like when you're talking about your interval training sessions, I bet you don't do interval runs every day, do you? Nope, exactly. So there are periods of intensity with any kind of athleticism. Oh, there's another word that got me, Andy.
That's all right. You got out of that quite nicely. Don't say it again. You've already said it now.
Yeah.
Don't try to.
Damn it. Anyway, athletes build to periods of intensity.
Nice swerve.
Yeah, they don't train for competition. They don't train at the level that they compete at all year round. They do sustainable things that gradually get them fitter over time, peaking to periods of intensity. And that periods of intensity is usually a competition. Yeah, because if they trained at that level all year round, they'd be absolutely broken.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just something to think about.
Yeah, and one thing that actually just occurred to me when we were going over, or just looking at that, and I was thinking, I wonder where this came from. And part of it was, like I said, I think people like the feeling of feeling broken or sweating or feeling a bit sick. It's like, yeah, I've definitely worked hard, but I think a lot of this came from some research or some beliefs that if you do like interval training or push your like cardiovascular system harder, there's a bit of like an afterburn effect. So your metabolic rate is increased more for longer afterwards.
Yeah.
And it's true, right? But this is one of those things where it's true, but it's true that does happen, but it's literally like you're talking about something like I'm sure it's around like 10 calories difference or something, but in a percentage form that can look
massive.
It can look like, oh, this is definitely worth doing, but it just doesn't have this profound beneficial effect that a lot of people or certain fitness professionals or people in the media or whoever, when they talk about interval training being, oh, this is the way, this is the key to it. It's not. It's just another form of training. There is nothing special about it in terms of fat loss. Absolutely none.
Wasn't that study though? That study was like those participants, they were literally going to like maximum intensity, weren't they? They weren't just, they were being beasted. They weren't just like 30 seconds of burpees for time. And they knew that they had to go and do the shopping and pick the kids up from school later. Like, do you know what I mean? They were actually being like, they were left on the floor. So, and that kind of stuff like taps into your CNS so much that you are broken for the rest of the day. So
CNS, Rambo, for the
central nervous system.
Thank you very much.
If anyone's ever gone to maximal intensity and walked out of a workout where they literally feel like they're having an out of body experience, that is what it feels like. And like sat down to eat later and just been like,
just having a moment.
Like that is what it feels like when your CNS is that battered. And it's only happened to me a couple of times with a couple of workouts I've done. One being the rowing tester that we did once at Lift Off, and we were talking about that yesterday in class. Actually, disgusting.
That's funny. So when you were talking about that, I was thinking about my experience on a rowing machine, because that's the last time I can remember feeling absolutely horrendous.
Talk me through yours.
It was like some kind of like monthly gym competition they were doing at the time. So I can't remember if it would have either been like 500 meters or 1,000. It was some kind of like sprint basically.
Yeah.
But I'm not generally competitive, but obviously with a load of people egging you on, it's like, okay, let's go for it. So I finished it. I remember getting off and like my legs being complete jelly and being sat by the side of the rowing machine, like, and thinking I'm going to have to move here because I'm just going to seize up. Got to the changing rooms and I think I might have passed out because I basically like lay down on my back and just, started to feel a little bit dizzy and then kind of like woke up again. So yeah, not a good look that. Not a good look at all. Right, we've hammered that.
Yeah.
Next one on the list. Do you want to take BCAAs or do you want me to jump ahead with this food will help me lose fat?
No, you go. I think you go. I've spoken enough.
Okay, mate. You just chill out for a bit.
Oh, well, thanks, mate.
So next one on the list I've got here is X food will help me lose fat. So this happened to me the other day, which is why it's fresh in my mind. And I'm gonna name and shame here. It's my mother-in-law, Sue Sturgeon, who actually she did two hilarious things when she came around the other day. First of all, she was appalled that Sarah was eating hula hoops, which made me laugh. She was like, "You shouldn't be eating them," and Sarah's like, "Why shouldn't I?" She's like, well, Andy. I was like, "Don't look at me. Don't drag me into this." So I was like, you make your case against hula hoops and we'll listen. Ready salted.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll take that. At least it wasn't beef.
That's Sarah's favourite, beef.
Oh, no. I loved your wife until then. Beef.
You can't be trusted with crisp flavours either after your debacle on Facebook the other day.
Salt and vinegar or prawn cocktail, the only two flavours.
Prawn cocktail. Anyway, what's I saying? Yeah, she had a go at Sarah because hula hoops too greasy apparently, which made me chuckle. And then we got into the discussion of context with food and that kind of stuff. But then as it flowed on, I was like, "So what would you have as a snack soon?" She's like, "Oh, I'll tell you what I'm doing at the moment. I'm eating yogurts." And I was like, "Okay." And she's like, and she looked. I didn't comment any further. And she looked at me and was like, "Well, they're good. They're good for you, aren't they?" And I was like, "What do you mean by good?" Like just being a complete arsehole, basically.
Yeah. To your mother-in-law.
To my mother-in-law, she loves it. But she's like, "Oh no, but they're good for weight loss. They help you lose weight, don't they?" And I was like, and I could see Sarah laughing away, like at the corner of my eye, because she knows this conversation. Anytime anyone asks me this at like a wedding or a party or a social, she's like, "Oh, I'm going to go and get the drinks now," and he's going to educate a bunch of people. And jokes aside, this myth is just like there's any food that is inherently good or superior at helping you burn fat. And that to a lot of people is going to sound mind-blowing because they're going to be like, well, surely an apple's better than a chocolate bar. This is the way the argument goes, right? Yeah, but surely like, like salmon and rice is better than fish and chips. And it's not a case of better, right? Or it's not a case of that's going to help you lose fat quicker. And I think what people get confused is a difference between food quality and food quantity. And again, if we're talking about weight loss or fat loss, the number one driver is a calorie deficit. And a calorie deficit is all about quantity, not quality of the food. So for example, I could eat the worst diet in the world. I could be drinking like pints of hydrogenated fat and living off Pringles and hula hoops or whatever else. If I was just eating 1,500 calories a day versus a diet of 2,000 calories, which was pristine, all fresh, whole ingredient foods, I would lose more weight eating the shit diet. I'm going to feel terrible.
Bad way. Yeah.
I'd be in a terrible state. I'd be awful. I don't recommend it. I don't think you should do that. But that's how powerful calories are in terms of weight loss. They are everything. So when someone says blueberries are good for weight loss, avocado's good for weight loss, chia seeds are good for weight loss, salmon's good for weight loss, they're not. They're just part of a healthy diet. They're not helping you lose weight. There's there's the kind of combination of, if you eat better food, there's less chance of overeating it. It's a separate argument. But if we're just talking about the numbers, yeah, there is no such thing as a fat burning food or this is better for fat burning type food.
Yeah.
Rambo.
No, I completely agree. The word I always use is optimal. So there are foods that are more optimal for health in terms of they are usually whole foods. Whole foods. And they contain micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and they are usually single ingredient foods. But however, even they are not superior for fat loss. They are, the analogy I always think of is the avocado. So an avocado is a wonderful food with lots of health benefits, but because of its macronutrient composition, it has a lot of calories. So if you overconsume avocados, which is very, very easy to do because they are delicious, you will put on weight. As opposed to, so if you consume, like you've just said, Andy, if you consume 2,000 calories of avocado and 1,000 calories of chocolate, you'll lose weight with 1,000 calories of chocolate. So it's those, and we give a health halo, don't we? Or society or the industry gives a health halo, to some of these foods in terms of like the way they label and market and package things up. So, all these like health bars or energy bars or vegan at the moment is the latest health halo. Well, there are lots of vegan, and I'm not bashing the ethical or moral reasons that some people are vegan. Like, I completely take those on board. And, we've been experimenting with our foods, and there's a lot of vegan foods that we enjoy as well. However, vegan at the moment is seen like a real health thing. Well, Oreo cookies are vegan,
and delicious.
And delicious and very delicious. But, like there are a lot of health halos out there that will promote foods. So people will eat them thinking, oh, that's going to give me fat loss, but it's vegan. It's got to make me slim. It's got to mean I'm going to lose weight. And it's like, well, no, when you look at the back of that packet, that actually has more calories in than the Kit Kat Chunky. And I'd take a Kit Kat Chunky any day. In fact, honestly, I've got some in the cupboard.
That's a podcast in itself. It should be like the top 5 unhealthiest health foods or something like that. Because when you were saying about the vegan thing, and you just literally cast your mind back over the last, say, 5 years, we've had like vegan is very much the like the kind of buzz at the moment. But before that, you had, look at the range now of like gluten free, wheat free, and like how big that's got. Look at the use of protein as like a health marker. And again, it's not a bad thing. They're trying to get more protein into foods, but it's just that, clever packaging or clever labeling. Look, if you want a really simple bit of advice in terms of like food labeling and stuff like that, ignore every word that's written on it, turn it over, go to the back and look at total calories per pack. If you're concerned predominantly with weight loss or trying to reduce calories down, the total calorie number is the one that counts, not whether it's healthy or free from or high protein or whatever it is. That stuff does not matter. It does not matter in like those one-off purchases. But yeah, it is quite difficult, I think, for people to get their heads around that. And just like the fasted cardio thing, you can look at it in 2 different ways. So I've just told you now that there's no foods that you can buy out there that are going to accelerate weight loss. So people might be like, oh, what? That's terrible. Like, I thought I was, making good decisions. The reverse is true. There's no food, just like there's no foods that are going to help you lose weight. There's no foods that are inherently fattening either. So what I would like implore people to take from this is that finding a balance and having, for health, eat whole ingredient, minimally processed foods. But if you enjoy having a bag of hula hoops or Pringles, or you like avocado, do you know what I mean? Just have them in, but just look at the diet as a whole. Don't look at things in, good versus bad, right versus wrong. Very black and white, very much the thinking of the time as well. And it's easy. It makes very good it makes great social media fodder for people to put, you know, top 5 foods that reduce belly fat, top 5 foods that cause cancer. All that stuff is just,
it's bollocks.
it's heinous. It's not good. So
Yeah.
yeah, stay clear.
We've had this conversation before, the two of us as well, but like you just said, on the flip side, I was walking down the street today drinking a energy drink and bumped into someone I know, and they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't drink those," and I'm like, "Why not?" They're like, "Oh, they're bad, aren't they? I thought you were healthy." I'm like, "Oh, I'm not even going to go there. Like, don't even start." Yeah, he's
just holding up my caffeine-free Diet Coke.
Oh no, mine was full of caffeine, but but no, like, for God's sake, like, come on, we're past this. Like, if I had a really, really suboptimal diet that was made up of purely just energy drinks that were full of sugar, high fat, highly processed, highly calorific foods, then it would be a different conversation. But I am a health seeking individual that enjoys eating and drinking things that she likes in moderation. So you can fuck off.
Your stomach will be in bits as well, mate, to be fair.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, I really do. Like, when some people challenge you about what you eat, especially the last year or so, I literally am like, are we still doing this? Like, let's get past this, you know?
Yeah. One day, mate. Maybe one day people will get it. Next on the list, do you want to pick one? What do you fancy?
I've just seen crunches for a 6-pack.
It's a classic. It's a classic.
So yeah, doing a shitload of ab crunches or sit-ups for, in whatever form they come in, as there are many forms of a crunch, for a 6-pack. Oh God, do people still want 6-packs anyway? Like, are we still like, I mean, I've had one and I've been told I look disgusting with it. So, you know, like, I'm fine with not having one.
Hold on, Rambo. What are you telling me, that doing crunches won't get me a 6-pack? What are you doing to me here?
Okay, so let's go into the science a little bit. So when we talk about the 6-pack, we're obviously talking about the midriff, the core muscles. Core muscles actually come in many different layers. So when you work the core, and anyone that's done any kind of like PT training, or especially if we get into the realms of pre and postnatal, which I know we're saving that for another podcast, but the core is actually made up of layers of muscle, and the ones that are most important probably to strengthen are actually the deepest ones, because they are the ones that are really going to give you that stability, make sure you're, like, you know, rock solid, really help you brace through different movements, give you that strength that's going to allow you to lift that barbell off the floor, make sure that you're protecting your spine and your back, and actually mean that you're less inclined to actually get any injury. So the deeper muscles that you really want to try and work are the ones that aren't actually activated by doing hundreds and hundreds of crunches. And you could have the most perfect 6-pack as well, that has been gained through strength training. And, you know, maybe you have done hundreds of crunches, because they will work the surface muscles. You know, there is a little bit of activation still going on there when you do these kind of crunches. But if you do not have the low enough levels of body fat that you can actually see those abdominal muscles, they're just going to be hidden, I'm afraid. I mean, we've all got a 6-pack underneath. It's there. It's just underneath. Yeah. So it's just one of those things. And like, also, if you are the type of person that genetically carries a lot of weight around their midriff, you could diet and, you know, be in a calorie deficit for a long period of time, but you actually might not lose the weight of your midriff that you need to reveal those abdominal muscles. So, you know, you could have the best will in the world and have the leanest body. And we spoke about this before, like, in terms of, if we just talk about the way my body's made up, like, my arms, my shoulders are always more defined, but my bum and my legs are nowhere near. I'll always lose it off my top half before my bottom, because that's just my genetic makeup. So if your genetic makeup's not of that makeup that you're going to lose body fat from your abdominal area, then unfortunately we're never going to see that 6-pack. And the thing is, as well, as we get older, we're more predisposed to actually carrying body fat around our middle. So the older you get, the harder it's going to be. I'm really sorry.
Thanks for that, mate. You've just crushed my dreams there.
You've had one. You can shut up.
No, I was thinking more about getting older.
Well, you're there already, so you're also screwed.
I'm beyond. Yeah, take home point is basically if you do crunches, there's nothing wrong with doing crunches, but like as Amy was saying there, actually there's a lot more to core training than just endless sit-ups and crunches. Again, probably another whole other podcast in itself. The main reason people don't see like visible six-pack muscles is too much body fat. It's not normally a lack of a lack of crunches or a lack of exercise. Like, you don't have to do, there's plenty of people that I know that don't resistance train that have got six packs, but actually most of them are runners and they're incredibly lean. So they've got low levels of body fat. So it kind of comes with they're not training for a six pack. They just run like maniacs and they've got them by default because the body fat level's low. So the question of like, who wants to get a six pack? Well, if you do, first of all, question why. There's nothing wrong with it, but just think about if it's going to take if we're telling you probably like lay off the crunches and then potentially look at the diet to reduce the body fat, it's actually quite a lot of effort unless you're predisposed to kind of being lean or you're incredibly active, or again, if you're younger, you're going to have an easier time, but still potentially for a lot of people quite difficult. Like if you grabbed 100 people on the street and got them to show you their stomachs, I mean, if you did that, you'd probably be arrested. But if in a hypothetical situation like that was an option, you'll probably get a couple of people in that 100 that have maybe got visible abs. Like if you're lucky, like 5% maybe. So yeah, just don't. If you're spending like 15 minutes like hammering the core at the end of a session, maybe do 5 minutes and spend 10 minutes doing meal prep to look at the diet. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not, again, nothing wrong with crunches. It's just like, is this a good comparison or not? I was just going to say, it's like
Is it a car analogy?
It's not a car analogy. It's a training analogy, but it's like when people want bigger arms and they just hammer curls all day long. So there's nothing wrong with doing curls for direct arm work. But actually, if you were doing like the compound pulling movements, getting some chin ups in there alongside the curls, that would be the best option. So for like a visible six pack, doing some core work is great, probably a bit broader than just crunches, but doing that combined with having low body fat or taking care of the diet, that's going to be the best option. So don't go hammering thousands of crunches day after day thinking that it's going to get you a six pack, because it won't.
I mean, like, do PT still program crunches? Like sometimes we do sit-ups in our workouts, but like mainly to get some floor work in or something like that. And very, very, very rarely, it's usually kind of a scaling option for people that can't do any kind of toes to bar or anything like that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there's a big difference between like toes to bar versus doing a crunch, like kind of skill and strength level. I mean, I quite like it for people are, I don't know, maybe people struggle to get that kind of level of flexion. Maybe they're a little bit hip flexor dominant, so you can kind of put them on the floor and just get them to really focus on, like a small controlled movement. But am I programming like sets and sets from? I can't remember the last time I put them on a program. Let's put it that. I think there's better ways of doing. I think there's better core exercises out there.
Massively.
That you can do.
I mean, most of my core exercises I do with my clients are isometric, to be honest. So a lot of more like holds, static stuff, things that really make them think about engagement rather than just, because people do crunches wrong as well, like all the time, where they're just moving from their hips or they're using their like torso to generate some more kind of momentum, and
it's actually quite a good one to see, maybe like how almost putting it in like a movement assessment to see how people move versus putting it as like a like a right 3 sets of 15 type thing in a plan. But
interesting.
Nicely done, mate.
Your turn.
I mean, I'm going for the most obvious one on there. This is the one that I hear this is probably the myth that has been around since I started, and I still hear it now. And it's the no carbs after 6 p.m. I mean, it's or to be fair, it could be, there's two like iterations of it. There's no carbs after 6, or there's no eating late, or I don't eat after a certain time. But generally, it's I don't have carbs after 6 p.m. And the myth is that if you do that, it's going to be, again, superior for fat loss or weight loss. And spoiler, it's a myth. So I look at it again, and let's take the positives out of that. So the positives are you can eat carbs as late as you want, and it's going to make zero difference. So this is very similar to fasted cardio. So let's say you've got, let's take a few of my favorite carb meals. So let's say I've got porridge in the morning, I'm having a sandwich for lunch, and I'm having rice for dinner. Now I can, let's say I'm going by that, I've got the belief that, right, I've got to get all these carbs in by 6 p.m. So let's say I'm going to have my dinner real early. I'm going to have it at like 5 o'clock, and everything else stays the same, versus a day where I eat normally and I have my rice dish at 7 p.m., half 7, 8 p.m., whatever. If the meal sizes stay the same, the weight loss or weight gain or whatever it is stays exactly the same. There's no difference. I think there's two reasons why this is pervasive and just won't go away. If you weigh first thing in the morning, which is something, if you're going to weigh, I think that's a good idea. If you have a carb heavy meal later in the day, you will probably weigh heavier because you hold a bit more water. There's more food in the stomach. Therefore, that's reflected on the scales, and that freaks people the fuck out. So that's one reason. And I think the other one is people, again, rightly so, associate carbs as an energy source. And they think, well, if I'm putting all this energy in before bed, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to sit in my muscles, or just sit in the body, or it's stored as fat. And it does do that. Like if you take in a bunch of carbs before bed, if you've trained that day, maybe they go into the muscles as stored glycogen. If you haven't trained that day and maybe you've overeaten a little bit, maybe they're stored as fat. But the key there is that little word, or those two words, overeaten. If you're eating the same calories, it doesn't make any difference. If you're overeating, so it's not when the carbs are eaten, it's the sum total of them. Again, this is like, I feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall here, or just repeating the same thing with like, it's the total amount of calories that have the overriding effect, but it's true. So please, for the love of God, don't remove all carbs out of the evening meal thinking that it's going to have a superior effect, because it won't. You can quite happily eat low carb meals, like there's nothing wrong with that, but do it out of preference, not because you think it's a better way of doing it.
All I will say, I agree 80%.
Here
I agree 100%, but depending on the carb source that you are choosing may lead to the but may lead to the tendency to overconsume on that macronutrient. So, for example, if I gave you 100 grams of rice or 200 grams of cooked rice and you ate it, you'd probably be full. And I said, do you want any more rice? Or kept giving it to you, or said, oh, there's an unlimited portion of cooked rice in the kitchen, you can have as much as you want. You'd probably be like, huh? You'd keep eating. Yeah, you and your porridge. But you'd probably be like, oh no, you're all right. I'm okay for cooked rice. The thing is, when people say that's a carbohydrate in its, say, like purest form, when we're talking about carbohydrates after 6 p.m., dinner tends to be a really lovely evening meal that you've enjoyed with your family, or maybe you've gone out for dinner. There's a little bit of flavor in there. There's a little bit of fat in there. There's a bit of sugar. There's a bit of salt. And those are things that make food really, really tasty, and then leads to a little bit of overconsumption. So I say overconsumption in general, not even a little bit. So if we kind of factor all that in, if you've had a really lovely meal of say you've had like a stir fry and you've got a bit of soy sauce in there, a little bit of ginger, and you've had some noodles and a bit of chicken, you've got some veg in there, but that salt and that carbohydrate mix is really on your tongue, and you're like, I could really eat something sweet now, and it's after 6 p.m. that it's those kind of maybe more behavioral or environmental things that with the associative carbs make you then want to overeat even more carbs, so even more combination of the carbs, the fats, the sugar and the salt. So I think there's a little bit of that in there as well, because eating carbs usually leads to eating more carbs, which usually leads to eating more carbs because carbs are brilliant.
Carbs are tasty. Yeah, it's exactly like you said. It's just overconsumption. So again, like when we're talking about the, X food doesn't make you fat, but there are foods that are easier to overconsume and do lead to just, like if I start eating a tub of Ben and Jerry's, for example, it's going to take all my willpower in the world to stop, once I get to a portion's worth. I mean, I'm doing half a tub, whatever happens.
Oh,
Maybe exactly, and a lot of the time it might be the whole tub, and that's
I was going to
because,
say half.
right, mate, 1,000 calories in one of those bad boys.
I don't give a shit. If I'm going in, I'm going in.
All or nothing. Yeah, and that's the issue. But again, it comes down to quantity and overconsumption. It's not actually the food itself, and it's not the time of day itself. But when you combine these things together, it can be quite a potent mix. Like if you're by the end of the day, you've had a few glasses of wine, maybe you've had your evening meal, you're just settling in, and someone brings out like a giant bag of Kettle crisps or whatever, then that's a lot of carbs that can suddenly get demolished without really thinking about it. But again, it comes down to portions, it comes down to not overeating, consumption, all that stuff. And it's just, if you're one of these people that actually quite enjoys eating later in the evening and it just suits your work and suits your kind of social life, if you like, then there's no reason why you can't. You might just have to be a little bit more mindful earlier on in the day.
Yeah, all about balance.
Always is, mate. Do you want to do one more, or do you want to call it a day there?
How long have we been going for? I'm thinking about the poor listeners.
That must be coming up for an hour.
Oh, it's at least.
Yeah, do you reckon?
At least. I don't know what time we started. As you can see, we're very aware with this podcast today.
Yeah, we don't know, do we? We haven't got a bloody clue.
I think when we start depends on how long we chat off air for before, doesn't it?
I think it was actually, we probably have been going for over an hour, haven't we?
Yeah. But I definitely think there's scope for another myth or bullshit broadcast, let's say.
Bullshit broadcast, myth busting.
Bullshit broadcast. If you do have any bullshit you want to call out, let's just say it, in the fitness industry, flick us a message. We love hearing all your feedback and any kind of questions that you've got.
Yeah, because a lot of these are quite like when we explain them out, there's a lot of these, there's like rational behind them. So it's not like it's not that people should feel stupid for it, for believing any of these, because I think I probably believed, I'm looking at that list now, I probably believed every one of those at some point until someone was kind enough to kind of set me straight. So yeah, let us know if you've got any questions or any myths you want us to have a little look into. And yeah, we'll be more than happy to do that for you.
I'm just looking at them and seeing how many I believed. I actually believed the last one for quite a long time.
Yeah, me too.
We didn't even talk about that one.
We'll save that. There's the little cliffhanger. Yeah, I believed all of those. Absolutely. And I adjusted my diet and training around some of them as well.
Ooh, wow.
You live and learn.
Wow.
Live and learn.
Yeah, I think I probably did as well.
Yeah. So don't feel bad, everyone. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
Hopefully, this is the whole point of this, or one of the points of the podcast, is to put out reliable information that you can actually, maybe it is a light bulb moment, or maybe it just helps you prioritize your training and diet. Because this stuff is, it can be hard enough anyway without going down a path or adhering to a bunch of stuff that makes zero difference. Like none of the things we've mentioned, I don't think are. Just double checking before I say this. None of the things that we've mentioned or any of those myths, none of them are harmful. Like if you do any of them, or if you believe any of them, it's not necessarily bad. It's just, to me, it's like a game of efficiency and where do you want to dedicate your time and how quickly do you want to get results and what do you want to focus on. And this is the whole point of learning whether that's like taking the time to listen to podcasts or hiring a coach or going on YouTube and watching videos or whatever it is, just take some time to do it, because you'll save so much time in the long term if you get on top of this stuff.
Yeah, I literally was just going to say your time would just be better spent putting that energy into other things. That's all.
Absolutely. Right, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure as always.
Looking forward to next week already. Like we said, any feedback, ping it over. We're more than happy to respond. So yeah, that's us. Take it easy, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Not Another Fitness podcast. If you liked what we do, please subscribe and share. Tell all your friends. And if you want to follow us over on our socials, you'll find me and my contact details over on Instagram at The Flying Food Coach. And you'll find Andy
over at Facebook at the Facebook group Eat, Move, Lift, Enjoy, or feel free to drop me an email on info@andrewjohnscraggs.com. Thanks again for listening. Until next time. That'll do.
Yeah, that'll do. That's good.
That'll do. I'll put that on there as well. That'll do.